Success is adrenaline-like. It's a great, soul vitamin, as it were. And we've seen where people are successful, they're able to use the engines of that success to do a lot more with greater effervescence. Failure, especially, and I repeat, in the Indian context, is very dwarfing. And I want to come back to politics because, you want to straddle these worlds. On a personal basis, if I were to give this government marks, I would give them 70 on 100. But large sections of the media have written them off.
70 on 100 doesn't get you into a college these days.
Yeah, but, who would want to go to St. Stephen's? I hope you're not from St. Stephen's. See, I knew.
Now that you've offended 70% of this audience, let's carry on.
They're not from St. Stephen's. I love LSR. No, but on a serious note, on a personal basis, I think the government has done phenomenally well. For the first time in the history of India, you have a cabinet that is not corrupt. Earlier you would ask, "Bhai, this guy is corrupt, but wo thoda sa honest hai. This guy is corrupt, par kaam kar deta hai." Here, what Modi has achieved, to my mind, is a genuine fear amongst corporate India. And I'm seeing this across. It augurs well. There are lots of people saying, "Oh, crack down on black money, people are becoming NRIs." I said, forget NRIs, they should be in jail. But the reality is that the government is doing very well. But look at the surround sound. Yes, there are mistakes. When I was talking about the divisiveness of the government, I've written about it. I think Modi should shut some of his people who make stupid comments of a religious nature. And to have an Owaisi and then compare a Giriraj to an Owaisi is silly. Modi, to my mind, and I've known him from 1999, he was my briefing client. He used to come to Uday Park, when my mom was visiting in those days, to brief me when I was handling the Vajpayee campaign. That guy is focused on development. And there's so much of surround sound which is distracting. But we are an unforgiving country. We're an impatient country. We now want Modi to become our plumber, our electrician. He must clean the roads. He must be responsible for drainage.
Well, he's picked up the broom himself. He seems to want to.
But see, that is the mistake.
See himself as the one man.
You're right. And I've written an article, in fact, for the Wall Street Journal. They asked me to write an essay on him. And I said the problem is India is all about the optics. The day you pick up the jharu, they expect you to come to your house and clean. They don't see it as a movement. They see, yaar, agar isne jharu uthaya, mere ghar bhi aa jaye.
Not ki maine bhi uthana hai.
So, but we'll come to the question and answers later. So, to my mind, as you see the government, so you should see the corporate sector. We're too easy to judge the corporate sector, to my mind. And today what's happening is there's viciousness in the media, both qua politics and qua the corporate sector. We're very unforgiving about failure, as I mentioned, and we are not giving avenues to create successful role models. India is the worst. I said in a speech, I think 3 days ago or 4 days ago in Calcutta, where I said, why have we in India, with all the IT, noise or around us, why haven't we created an Apple or a Google? Why are we happy body shopping? Why are we happy with labor arbitrage, which is exactly what our IT industry is about? The reason is we don't allow for incubation of ideas. We want everything day before yesterday. We're not waiting to invest in the future. That, to my mind, has to change. On the flight today, Manish Kejriwal, who used to run Tamasek, also better known as Rahul Bajaj's son-in-law, he tells me, he says, "Oh, but Amit Shah said it'll take 25 years. I said, yeah. I said, you took, 9 months to produce a baby. He has to run a country of 1.28 billion people. And it will take that long, and it should.
Yeah, his marketing campaign came a bit early.
See, to my mind, at that point in time, and let's just wrap this up, because I was deeply involved, not with the campaign, but with some of the strategies. We had become a hopeless country. Not hopeless in a negative way, we had lost hope. We had lost hope, we had become cynical, we had become delusional, and we had become completely detached from the political environment of our country. I think Manmohan Singh in history will go down as one of the finest human being prime ministers we've had. But we began to ridicule even our prime minister. There can be nothing more distressing for me as a citizen to see my prime minister as the object of ridicule. And the tragedy is we forget easily. We've forgotten the enormous contribution of Manmohan Singh to this country. So at that time, we were at a cusp, to my mind, where there was a lot of trauma being inflicted on the average citizen. What Modi has done is he's inspired hope. He said, not all is over and let's begin. So the sense of renewal is as critical in politics as it is in the corporate world. Companies need to reinvent, rejuvenate, renew in order to be enduringly successful, or else you'll see a break.
One of the other things I noticed that we don't seem to come across as very well internationally. You mentioned some of the real problems with Indian business and the way of thinking about incubation is really philanthropy. And I noticed that even in your book, not many of the characters, perhaps Anand is one of the examples, is really interested in speaking about the kind of philanthropy that we have seen, any of the famous people do. Even as Steve Jobs gave away so much money completely quietly. Nobody was allowed to talk about it. Bill Gates has often been seen as saying that I want to give my children enough money to make it on their own in the world, but not so much money that they never try. The whole idea that everything you earn is in fact a trust for other people or should work towards, especially in a country like India where there is as much poverty and as much misery is there. Why do you think that is?
I think you've hit the nail. I think the worst thing about present day India is our lack of compassion. I know the Tatas do a lot. 66% of Tata Sons is owned by the trusts. All that money every year, which runs into about 2,000 to 3,000 crores, is then disbursed in a very transparent, honorable manner. But you look at some of your biggest companies. And today CSR has become the biggest goddamn racket. And I will only blame Sachin Pilot and his ilk, including your rival Chamber CII, which drafted that report under JJ Irani on CSR. You can't mandate 2% of a company's top line to CSR. Because companies that were doing far more are today going to be accountable to shareholders who will say, why the hell are you doing more? Just give me the dividend. I don't think Indian corporate leaders, most of them, and Indian corporations and Indian human beings, Indians as individuals, are doing enough in this area. But here's the tragedy. 3,800 years ago, the misogynist Manu, in Manu Smriti, forget what he said about women, and that's why he's a misogynist. But Manu Smriti talks about Dan. We don't need a Bill Gates and a Warren Buffett to come and tell us the importance of charity. We were the compassionate people. If you remember, if you go back into history, into Indian history, before the Mughals and analyze for yourself, you had temples which were created not because you wanted people to worship. You wanted people to be fed. You wanted people to have shelter. You wanted people to have, to my mind, solace for the soul. We then somehow lost it. And I think post-partition, right up to the Indira Gandhi years, those were years of greed and competitiveness. Not much has changed. Today, companies are doing it because they have to do it. I don't see the inspiration a lot. Yes, Azim Premji has pledged some large sums of money. But again, those are pledged in the form of stock. It's not as if that 53,000 crores is going to be spent. So it's just a nice, neat transfer so that you can get onto the front page of the Economic Times. But real money...
He's doing what the other
yeah, but real money is being spent, let's say, by the Tatas, by the Mahindras. Kumar Mangalam Birla. Amazing amount of work. The Birlas, by and large, I mean, I have to say this, not because this is a Marwadi emergent chamber of commerce, but the Marwadis have done a lot more than most communities. You've also got people who've sullied your image, but that's for you guys to handle. But the reality is, if I grew up in Calcutta. To my mind, the most important organization after the Red Cross used to be the Marwadi Relief Society, which did amazing work in a city like Calcutta. So you've had a lot of Marwari families, the Birlas, many, I can't remember them, of the Goenkas. I know Sanjeev is doing a lot in philanthropy in Calcutta. I'm sure there are many. The South, look at Venu Srinivasan of TVS. Amazing work. I sit on the board of Akshay Patra, and I can tell you that the South is contributing and doing far more than the North is. And a lot of people say, oh, is it because of Punjabi mindset or Northern mindset? No, you've got to understand sociology. Remember, a lot of people who came to the Delhis of the world lost everything during partition. They had to rebuild. So it wasn't greed, it was also creating a protection cushion that you kept all that money. Plus the whole Indian thing that, mere bete hai, meri beti hai, unke liye chhod ke jao. So we don't have that concept of let them make it on their own, which the Americans have. And then obviously there are tax issues, inheritance tax, blah, 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 which play their own role.
Are we also anachronistic with the times around? Because when you look internationally, businessmen or big business, they're no longer really known for their flashy lifestyles. Yet, in India, we will know Anand Mahindra flying, or Mukesh Ambani's 60-story mansion in the, which is called, sort of middle finger up to the slums of Bombay, was how it was described. But I'm just saying, are the successful Indians in a sense also out of touch with the rest of the world in that?
Okay, so full disclosure. So, Mukesh is a very, very, very dear friend for many years before 38 Altamount Road, which by the way they don't call Antilla anymore, came up.
Oh, what is it called now?
38 Altamount Road, that's the address. If you look at that building, so there were rumors about 1 billion has been spent, blah, blah. The total cost of the building is 325 crores, which is what Naveen Jindal paid for a house on Aurangzeb Road. In addition to all the coal mines and all, which I'm not going to get into, because I'm supposed to be apolitical this morning.
Oh, was that you being apolitical?
Yeah, that's why I said I don't want to get into all of that.
Just so I know.
Now the point is,
that
building also houses all the Reliance banqueting. All the dinners, all the company events, all the conferences are held at 38 Altamount Road. And one day I actually asked him, Babji was visiting, Gat Singh of Jodhpur. And Gat Singh said, oh, yaar, itna bada. I said, you're worried? I mean, you've got a bloody palace to live in here. What are you complaining about? The living area is just 3 floors. But I don't want to offer a defense or a thing. I believe each person must be entitled to live or drive or wear or eat what he or she wants, provided they do 3 things. Number 1, follow the law. Number 2, are inherently compassionate. And number 3, are building shareholder value. A little known fact about the Ambanis is that when the Uttarakhand earthquake happened, 147 crores was disbursed in 3 days. It wasn't disbursed by them so that people would doubt, disbursed through the government. Now, they don't want to talk about it? Fine. Neeta Ambani still runs the world's only newspaper in Braille for the blind. You and I don't know these things because they don't talk about it. Now, the tragedy is the media is also a bad news media. You guys don't want to report something that's happening. If a man bites a dog, it's news. If a dog bites a man, it's not news. So when you want to create a media environment in which only the negativity gets amplified, you will then see everything through a negative prism. And I'm not only saying this about media, I'm also saying this about Indians. Indians are inherently envious about everyone else's success. I remember many years ago, your colleague on the same goddamn channel that you used to work for, one day calls me, he says, Pranab Mukherjee has declared